Hey y'all, welcome to Tears and Joy in Your 20s. I'm your host, Julia Light, and I am so glad you're here. Navigating your 20s comes with a lot of highs and lows, a lot of freedom, and a lot of uncertainty. That's why I created a space for conversation about all of it. On this podcast, you'll hear interviews of creatives, entrepreneurs, people doing big things in their 20s, telling their story, tears and joy and all. I hope this helps you know you're not alone. There's so much to look forward to, and you can savor this season right in the messy middle.
Welcome, Laura Leigh, to the podcast. Laura Leigh Rogers is a native Arkansan making her home in New York City, where she works in the performing arts industry and is the founder and CEO of the ministry and nonprofit organization Rise Collective. Rise Collective is on mission to intentionally disciple early career women in New York City who are hungry to pursue Jesus, seeking to study God's word, and desire to impact the kingdom with their gifts and their work. Laura Leigh also hosts Living in the Light, a podcast where she interviews artists and creatives, inviting them to share their stories of how Jesus has taken them from darkness into his powerful light. She loves life with her husband, Matt, and considers pursuing the presence of God to be the greatest delight of her life.
Thank you, Julia. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. Y'all, I listened to Laura Leigh's podcast like 3 or 4 years ago, like when I was in college in Texas, and so it's so fun that we're friends now.
I love when that happens.
I know. It's really cool.
It's happened to me a few times in podcasting where I get to sit across from someone that I looked up to or never thought I might have a conversation with. So it's always like a really beautiful thing when it comes around.
I know. It really is. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
Y'all, Laura Leigh has an amazing story. I'm really excited for you to hear it. I would love, Laura Leigh, if you would just start with telling us the story of your 20s.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm 27, so I've had 7 years in my 20s. Ooh, 7 is my favorite number.
Ooh,
so that's kind of fun.
That is really fun.
That's a complete number.
Yeah.
But wow, when I think back, I don't remember what grade I was in when I was 20 years old, but I know that I was in college.
Yeah, probably
in my early 20s. Yeah. I'm an August baby, so I was always a little older for my grade, but I went to college at Oklahoma City University, and I was born and raised in Arkansas, and so musical theater took me to Oklahoma City and that university, and college for me was an incredibly transformational season of my life, as it is for many people.
Mm-hmm.
Just being away from home, and I think with being a person of faith, having grown up in a Christian home and just going to Christian summer camps and just being saturated with who Jesus is and being taught those things, but then being in an environment where it wasn't primarily Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to college with just like musical theater and Broadway, kind of stars in my eyes. That's what I was chasing after, and it really began to consume just what I was chasing after. And by my sophomore year, really kind of spiraled into some anxiety and an eating disorder, and it was a lot of like self-focused stuff. And it was in that place that God really resurrected me. And I realized there's got to be more than just what I'm chasing after.
Yeah.
And it was then when I started going to a local church in Oklahoma City, and got involved with a college ministry and really got established in community. And just everything kind of took off from there. Like, I feel like that time of just like suffering, and I had a couple of boyfriends that just weren't healthy experiences, and just being regrounded in community and finding Jesus for like myself as an adult.
Yes, it's very different in college than in high school. It is very different
in college, and it just changed. I feel like it really changed the course of where I was headed. And specifically, women's discipleship and community became just something that I fell in love with in college. I worked at the summer camp Kanakuk one summer and came back just with like the Great Commission and discipleship, like go make disciples, share Jesus with the world, as just like a heart cry, and became really passionate about that. So I started leading a Bible study on campus for just other girls. And it was from there that, I don't know, I think about the place when I was moving to New York after college in 2019. It was like the foundation that was laid during my college time, and just really establishing like who I was in Christ and the role of community, that I moved to New York and I was like, I have to find good community.
Yeah.
Like it was my number one priority.
Right. Even above like
career.
Yeah.
I was just like, I have to find a church community. I know what it was like doing life without people, and I don't want to go back to that. So I moved to New York to pursue acting, musical theater, Broadway, and got an agent from our senior showcase that my college did,
Awesome.
Which was a real blessing. And so that was kind of helpful in taking the next step in figuring out, what to do next. And it can be so hard to navigate, where do I start with auditioning? And I'm just thankful for their support in that time. And started going to Church of the City, which is our church community now here in New York. And wow, when I think of something that has really transformed my life in my 20s, it has been this church community in particular. And just got involved in a community group that fall. It was I moved in August, so it was like the transition time to all the groups were starting back up and everything that was happening. And it always feels kind of scary when you're stepping into community, or I don't know, in your 20s it feels like you are kind of starting anew several different times. Like you're going to college and you're a freshman in college, and then you're a freshman in life in the real world, and it just feels like you kind of get things figured out. And then, but that's probably all of our life. It's not just your 20s.
Right.
Like you kind of figure something out, and then you're
like,
on
something brand new.
On to the next season. But just like getting into a new community group. And I actually met my now husband in that community group that I started going to that fall. So I moved in to New York fall, August 2019, which we know the pandemic was on the horizon. So I was in New York, living my best life, so happy, so free from the joy that God had given me in my last couple of years in college, and excited to be here, and all these great things are happening. Had a crush on this boy in my community group. He didn't even know I had a crush on him. And then March 2020, this agent, that talent agent that I had, got me this audition for Mean Girls on Broadway. And I had some like pretty great auditions, but this was definitely like the biggest audition that I had. I was flying back from Arkansas from like a weekend trip, and I remember getting the email that was like, on Monday, you have this audition for the first replacement of Karen Smith in the Broadway production of Mean Girls. Here's like your whole packet that you have to learn and be there. So I had 2 auditions within a week and got the job on that Friday, or got the offer that
in 1 week. Oh, wow.
So crazy. And was in the room with like Tina Fey and the whole creative team. And it was like this dream I had, I moved to New York to pursue that. And you do not think it's going to happen in 9 months, because it takes many people years before they get that kind of opportunity. So, I was with the show, or I rehearsed for like a few weeks, and then sadly made my Broadway debut Tuesday, March 13th, which was the week that COVID just shut down everything. So from there, I got on a plane and went home to Arkansas, because everything was so uncertain, and
so
we didn't know what New York was going to look like, and we didn't know what the show was going to look like. So I was back in Arkansas like a week later, and
you got to do the show like 2 or 3 times?
3 times.
3 times.
2 days. We had 2 shows on that Wednesday, but it was so crazy. But at the time I was like, okay, this is sad. This thing's happening, but we're going to be back. I'm going to go back to my job, and it's going to be wonderful.
I know.
I have this contract, and this COVID
It's
thing
coming
cannot
back.
take this away from me.
I know. I remember I was here visiting our friend Lucy.
Yeah.
And she was roommates with Elizabeth Teeter at the time, who went on to be in Beetlejuice. And she was in rehearsal for Beetlejuice and to go in. And she was like, I'm worried about this COVID thing. And I was like, girl, no way. They're not going to close Broadway.
No. Yeah, they did. They definitely
sure did. They
sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah, sadly, I ended up losing the job. We didn't find out till like February of the next year. But
oh, wow. So the whole time you're thinking that
the whole time we were like, the show's going to come back. It's going to come back. And they just had to make that decision. We actually weren't educated on why, but yeah. So I moved back home to Arkansas, and because of the nature of the audience of Mean Girls, a lot of the following is like teen girls.
Yeah.
Like young, it's younger. And I had gained 15,000 followers or something.
wow.
In a very short time, just from like the platform of Mean Girls.
Yeah.
And Broadway. And a couple weeks after being at home during COVID, I had a lot of girls that were messaging me, just asking questions about Jesus and questions of faith. I was pretty open about my faith on my social media before that.
Right.
And so I just think that I was like a safe place for them to reach out to. And a lot of them were like girls that were interested in musical theater. So we kind of shared that, maybe interest in faith or curiosity about it, but then also musical theater. And so I just quickly was like, okay, these are a lot of girls. How about I just put up a Zoom link on my Instagram and we can do a Bible study? Like, where else do you learn about God besides studying the Bible?
True.
So I put that up, and on the first Saturday that we had that online Bible study, we had like 150 girls that showed up to the Zoom call. And I was like, oh, guys, first of all, you are brave.
Yeah.
You don't even know each other, and you're all just like showing up on the Zoom call.
Wait, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was honestly, it was so beautiful. And it was just evident really quickly that God was in the midst of these gatherings and what we were doing. And so honestly, I was just kind of trying to stay in step with the Holy Spirit in that. And we just started studying the Bible. I used a lot of different online Bible studies and video series that had content that we could go through and be in small groups. Like, we kind of had a whole thing going on. And so I led those Bible studies, and we just kind of kept going. Like, I'd put out a new link on my Instagram and say, okay, now we're starting a Bible study on women in the Bible or whatever it was. And then girls would re-sign up. So some of them stayed throughout the whole kind of COVID year, but some of them it was kind of a rotation of new women and, women who would pop out and then pop back in. And so we did that until, I'd say spring 2021, things started to really open back up in the world. And we were like, okay, we should probably be in real Christian community. Not that wasn't real.
In person,
Christian community, and kind of be encouraging that to people because, we also all got really comfortable with Zoom, and then we were I don't really want to go be with people.
Oh, yeah. And you're like,
kind of a weird, I don't know, we turned into introverts and in different ways. But so I kind of share the details of that because it's really catapulted the last few years of my 20s, an adventure that I did not see myself going on, but that God really, he just really birthed a ministry in that COVID season. And I see the light from really the grief and sadness that was losing that job. And the door opening and then all of a sudden closing. But God was like, I'm actually going to use this for good. And just the way that if we're open to the Lord moving through something, and when we see him moving in a way, just staying in line with following him in that, and just getting to see so many women encounter the Lord and find new friendships, and women from all over the world. We had women from 10 different countries.
Oh my goodness.
Experience the online Bible study. So I moved back in 2021, and we can get into more details of the unfolding of my relationship.
Yes.
Than my now marriage.
Yes.
But spring 2021, when I moved back, I really felt the Lord saying, gather women in New York City and start doing the Bible studies and discipleship there versus online. So I shifted and just started opening my door to girls in New York City to come and once a week just worship and pray and read the Bible. We did several different Bible studies together in the city, and it was that summer that I really felt the Lord say that this was something more than just like, it didn't really have a name. It was just like Laura Leigh's Bible study community. And he was like, I need you to like actually like treat this seriously. I have something in store for this ministry. So it was then that like it was given the name Rise Collective and really kind of became a thing.
What made you choose that name?
I love that you asked. So actually I was given, the Lord spoke to me in college one day. I was sick and reading my Bible in bed, and the verse in Isaiah 60 that says, arise and shine, for your light has come. The glory of the Lord rises upon you. I just felt like he said a ministry of just women rising up.
Wow.
And I was like, a ministry? What? I didn't really know how to understand that at the time. But it was during COVID and seeing what God was doing through that, and then him really saying, like, this is something that I'm doing. I was able to connect the dots of like, oh, God said, maybe this is the thing, you know? And then it helped me really trust God that he was the one doing something, and I wasn't just coming up with something and like my own strength or my own idea.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I didn't really know what I was doing. It then became a nonprofit organization, and we have a lot of future vision for discipleship for young women in New York City. And yeah, so the last couple of years has looked like learning how to run a nonprofit and lead I have 2 employees that work with me now. And yeah, just I think navigating pursuing artistry and being a performer and having this just like creative heart, and but then also seeing that God is really using my creativity in this ministry.
Right.
And I'm a visionary, so like I feel like I can see kind of big picture in most things, and I just feel like with Rise Collective, I constantly get to just dream with God and pray and like ask him questions and just bring to life what I feel like he's speaking and saying, and then kind of watch him move through it. So I love that part of the work. And I do feel like it even influences who I am as a performing artist, and like gives me confidence in my leadership skills that I'm building in the nonprofit job, that like I can carry that into the performing arts and my work there. So yeah. And then, I met this guy through this community group, and I had a big crush on him. I'll let you ask me about the story. But,
yes, I will.
We're now married, so that has been a large portion of
your 20s,
of my last few years, and
Oh yeah, I'm so excited to ask about that. I specifically asked her like, can you talk about your love story, because you're the first married person that we've had on the podcast, which is so fun. And we'll have more soon, but that's just a fun thing. But before we jump into that, I'm curious your thoughts on, or just how you would explain, like you've shared a lot of times that you felt God spoke to you about something or another. And some of us listening probably do have like a similar faith background. Some people might have a really different faith background, or they may be Christian but not use that language, or they may not have a faith at all. And so how would you explain, even for me, honestly, I'm curious. I'm like, oh, I want that. I want God to speak to me. So like, what does that look like for you when you're like, God spoke this to me?
Yeah. I'm always still learning how God speaks. And I think I know he speaks through his Holy Spirit, who he's given those who believe in him, that he promised us he would send us his Holy Spirit. And his Holy Spirit there's a lot of mystery to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And I think he speaks to people in very different ways.
Yeah.
Because we're all so uniquely wired, and only God knows how we are wired.
That's true.
And so we all have this unique conversation that we get to have with God. And I think for me, being a visionary, I feel like I'm very imagery driven, I guess. And I notice God like in creation and in just I feel like he speaks to me through the world around me in different ways, and just kind of like learning how to notice him through the world around me. But then I'd say the primary way that I like have consistently learned to hear the voice of God is through his word. I mentioned like Isaiah 60 being like he spoke. I felt like I heard rise up, in like it had weight to it that felt significant, but like the verse literally said like arise and shine. So
like
I think
highlighting something for you that's already written down. Okay.
And I mean, I remember that from a young age when I would read the Bible, that, you know, the word is living and active. And so if you've never read the Bible before, when you read the Bible, God has a way of meeting us right where we're at when we read it. And so it almost feels like, does this verse like, it's like it's written just for me?
I know, that does really happen.
This time. And like, I remember that happening when I was a kid, and I'm like, this book is different. Like when I open it, it just feels like God just speaks and meets you.
Wow.
And that's just like the power of his Holy Spirit and the power of his word. So
very true.
Yeah, I think just in prayer and spending time with God. And I'm a big question asker. Like I ask God a lot of questions because he responds. And I just think the more we can come to him with curiosity, even if you've never talked to God before, like being able to ask him like, God, will you show me your love for me today?
Yeah.
And then, like, wait on him and watch him show you. Like he will.
Yeah,
you know?
no, that's true. I have really experienced that in my life.
Yeah.
With that specific question.
Yeah.
Do you feel like if you're spending time asking questions to God, I feel like sometimes for me, and I feel like in our generation or just our culture today, we're so distracted. We're so on to the next thing. And I feel like probably a lot of what hinders me from that like peaceful sort of communion is just jumping to the next thing, or maybe I'm listening to worship music, but it's on my phone. Like, how do you kind of quiet your mind to listen and wait?
It's definitely, I think it's a fight. And it requires being okay with stillness and practicing solitude and taking specific time to get away with God. And it's just you and God. And like, I think asking questions is a really beautiful part of it, but also normalizing just like being with God in the Holy Spirit and like bringing your mind into awareness. Like, God is with me, and God, like, if there's anything you want to say, like I'm open to you, you know? And I think God really moves through availability and people who just make space for him. And want him, you know? Like, I want to hear from you today, you know?
And more than just like for 1 minute and then I gotta go.
And realize like you then can carry him throughout your whole day, you know? And those times of solitude can be like just reminders of that gift of the Spirit of God, and trying to, they teach us on the prayer team at church, like having one ear with the person you're praying for and like one ear with like heaven. And just learning how to like be present with someone or something, but then also remembering like we can have a dialogue with God like all day, every day. You know? And I'm not always good at that because we have so many things that run through our mind every day. But,
but a practice over time to get to that point. Or just to continue growing in that. That's really good.
I mean, I'll say too, I wrote down as like maybe like a challenge or something that God has really taught me in my 20s during that COVID season. I feel like the gift in that time was the amount of quiet that I had. And I feel like for me, something I'm so grateful for to this day, like I'm honestly a lot of times trying to get back to that time and like what the Lord and I shared at that point. But I just felt so weak and weary and needy, but then also had so much space to listen. And I would go on these long walks like into the forest by myself and like I literally would talk out loud to the Lord just because I had nothing else to do. Like there was actually time to just like process everything on your heart and on your mind. And I feel like God really awakened dreams and gave me just like a new depth in prayer because of just that mix of like the neediness, but also the space to like, there wasn't a lot of other stuff that we fight for every single day to like get out of the way, to like get still and to hear from God. So I feel like the things that he taught me in that year, I'm like continuing to carry.
Oh, so foundational.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Wow. Okay. Tell us about your husband and your love story, because I know COVID also played a role in that.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. I mean, I've shared our story to other people before. I've never shared it like on a podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's kind of exciting to get to share it because it is really beautiful. So yeah, we met at that community group fall of 2019. I had a crush on him pretty quickly. From the moment I was spending time with him because I thought he was really cute. And he showed up to community group every week. So I was like, this guy is committed. He clearly loves God. And I think that was like a special season for me because I felt like I got to observe him in community and see the way he loved other friends of mine, the way he showed up. Like you just get to observe someone's character.
Yeah. Yes.
When there was no romantic relationship happening. And so my affection continued to grow when I saw his character because I'm like, okay, he's not just cute and kind of seems like shiny, but he's like a really good guy.
Yeah.
So then COVID happened and our community group went online on Zoom for the pandemic. And our group was very committed to this CG. Like we had movie nights during the pandemic.
How sweet.
We met every single week. We like sent each other DoorDash on people's birthdays and just had like a whole culture during COVID, which was just so sweet.
Wow.
He was also in that community group on Zoom. And we... I wanted to get his attention. And so he said one day in like the icebreaker, he was like, I really like crossword puzzles. So, of course, Beth Moore had recently posted that she had created a Bible crossword puzzle.
Oh my, of course.
And
just
so
for you,
like,
honestly.
I don't really like crossword puzzles, but I'm going to send this to him and see if he wants to do a crossword puzzle together.
Genius.
And so he texted me, he was like, OMG, I would love to do a crossword puzzle. I'm like,
that's so cute. It's like a grandparent activity.
And so we started texting about the crossword. Each day would be like, did you get number 4 down? I got that one. And so we had this kind of banter going on. And then like we kind of finished the crossword and then kept texting each other. I'm like, yes, this is going well.
Oh.
And so we were really getting to know each other more. We started kind of FaceTiming and it had been a few months and my crush was like months in growth. So, it had been simmering for me, but I kind of got to a point I was like, he hasn't really brought up like, I don't know, a future relationship or kind of like what are his feelings for me. And I was really in a place of wanting to express my feelings.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I'm going to be mature and I'm just going to ask him how he feels and where he's at. And I think my heart is not okay if to like continue talking to each other the way we are.
Right.
If this isn't going anywhere. So it was a really hard leap of faith, but I kind of was like, he's probably going to tell me he likes me. Like, I wasn't really worried.
That's good. Yeah.
No, I felt confident about where this was going. I'm like, it's clear we like each other.
Yeah.
And all that to say, I kind of had a DTR and he was like, man, I'm not in the place to be in a relationship right now. And he really confronted that for himself, and which I really respect that he didn't just kind of carried on. But he knew, this is where I'm at. And there were some things that he was kind of working through personally. And he said, I also don't know when we're both going to be back in New York.
Right.
This will be long distance for, we don't know how long.
Yeah.
So I was so sad.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, I really like this guy. And from there, I stayed in that community group for a couple months, but actually ended up stepping out of the community group because he became the leader of the community group. And I was like, but this is hard for me. It's hard for my heart. And so I decided to kind of make some space. And I communicated to him. I was like, this is where I'm at. And like, I respect you. But And so, that was so hard for me. And it really sent me kind of on a personal journey of, I feel like it led me to, with God, really allowing him into just places in my heart where, I don't know, I guess I wasn't fully trusting him and allowing God to be my first love. And I think he showed me that and allowed the kind of like death of that dream and desire to just lead me to dependence on him. And I had shared this with you, and like, I'm happy to share this. I had gotten in prayer when I'd been praying about, I really like Matt, like, God, is this a good idea? Should I like him? Should I want to like pursue this? And I just felt a lot of affirmation from God, and felt like he gave me the phrase, like, it's going to be dead before it's resurrected. And I was like, what does that mean? And then when I confronted him and it really felt like it died, I was like, whoa, what is the resurrection? Like, I really wrestled with, okay, God, like, this is what you've said, but I didn't know what the resurrection was going to look like. Does that mean he's going to resurrect me through this? Or is he going to resurrect something else? Yeah. Or is my dream going to come true and he's going to resurrect our relationship? You kind of hope that maybe that might be it. But I think even the obscurity of it made me rely on God even more.
Okay.
Because I said, I trust you, but I want to, I don't know. I just want to surrender to you in whatever this could look like. So that was really a season of just several months, probably like 9 months or so of, just like deep pruning. It felt like God was just showing me something else in my heart that was just like, an idol is something that is, it's like our heart is the orientation of like where we put the priority of that thing is like above God.
Right.
And he was just showing me like, that's above me, and that's above me, and helping me like get free in my heart. Yeah. But in like, it was a pruning season, like it was like, just like, we're done with one thing and it's like, we're on to the next thing, But when I moved back to New York that summer, I was like so free of desire for a relationship, for desire for Matt. I felt like I'd really had an experience at church where I like saw him from afar, and I had this like cry where I felt like things just like came out of me, and I was able to forgive him, like not actually like walk up to him and say like, I forgive you, but like in your forgive heart. Him personally, and I was really just free. And then a friend came up to me one day, a friend that was in that community group and knew both of us really well. And she was like, do you think if Matt asked you on a date, like, would you be interested? And I was like, Matt Rogers? Like, are we talking about the same person? It was just so, I don't know. That shows you like kind of how.
So you were really like, no.
I had really gone on,
Wow.
And I mean, that even shows you like, I kind of had lost faith in the word that God had given me, and like the ways that he had really planted seeds of, I don't know. I felt like from the beginning, I kind of knew that there was something significant about Matt, but I didn't know. God was writing the story. And so then Matt texts me and he was like, hey, he was very upfront and was just like, hey, I know you might not want to meet up for coffee. And I know that I can't just like carelessly hang out with you. So like I do want to talk to you about like what happened and where I was at and really communicate. And I was like, wow, that was really respectful. And I just felt really honored by that message.
Right.
And so we met up for coffee it's actually a Bluestone Lane that's like in this church on the Upper East Side. It's like on the 90-something.
I think I've heard of that, but I've never been.
It's a really beautiful, we ended up going to the coffee shop at my bachelorette party because it was just like kind of a full circle experience. But we met at that coffee shop and he just like really shared his heart about where he was at and what he was going through.
Yeah.
And just said he like missed me and wanted to spend time with me and had really thought about it and was serious about wanting to take me on a date and get to know me more. And so he like kind of reconciled and asked me on a date within one date. And I was like, within that coffee day.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow. He was like, it's okay if you need to like take time to like give me a response.
You're like, I've had a year.
And I was like, okay. And then at the very end of, I just kind of like didn't say anything. At the very end of the coffee date, I was like, so when are we going on a date?
Oh, that's sweet.
So yeah, from there we dated for about a year, and then we got engaged on in Sutton Place in the I used to live in that neighborhood on the east side, overlooking the Queensboro Bridge, and we were engaged for a year, and then got married in Arkansas last July.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's been really beautiful to just experience God through that. And yeah, Matt he's just the best. And it's been really sweet to see just the gift of marriage and how two people can bring such different like giftings and just unique callings together and really help each other run faster. And he's been such a support for me in the journey with Rise Collective. And yeah, I'm just this like creative visionary, and he brings me so much steadiness. And he's very strategic and has organized.
Oh,
so he brings a lot of organization to my creative chaos sometimes. But yeah, just so thankful for him. And like I said, Church of the City has been so transformative in my journey in the past, in my 20s. And yeah, it's given me Matt, my husband.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. How was it like after all of that, once you started dating?
Yeah.
Were you immediately like, I'm in love, we're getting married? Or like, how did you date him for a year before getting engaged? Like, was that hard? Or did you really like
question?
I don't know. Yeah, whatever you want to share on that.
So I told you about this. I saw this image right before we started dating where God just like showed me his hands and my heart in his hands. And because I had experienced that, just like returning to God as my first love, I felt like I was able to receive Matt and the dating relationship in a way where it was like God was my number one. You know, he was my, like, I wanted to walk in step with the Lord, and I really wanted what God wanted. Whereas my desire in the beginning was just like, I want this thing because it was just pure desire.
Yeah.
You know, and so I felt like it was like surrendered desire at that point. And I felt a little cautious, if I'm being honest. Like, I felt a little nervous of like, really, you know, trust is earned, and it takes time to really trust someone, especially when you feel hurt from something in the past that you want to know before you kind of put everything, all your heart in.
Yeah.
I think it's really smart to guard your, like we say that in Christian culture a lot, like there's a verse that says guard your heart above all else. And I think in guarding my heart, I was, you know, taking one step at a time. Like, we're going to go on a date. We're going to go on another date. And then I'm going to learn more about him.
Yeah.
And really realizing that you both play a part in kind of analyzing, you know, is this where God is this the relationship God is calling us to individually and collectively? And is this someone that I want to spend the rest of my life with?
Yeah.
You know, like, you really want to think about those questions. So, I think it was a journey, but I really experienced God in it. And I just felt like he constantly gave me encouragement and affirmation. It was just like, you can trust me. Like, you can trust me, trust me. And if I am leading you into this, like, you can trust that I will hold it together. I will help you. Yeah. My parents got divorced when this is like a big thing to throw out randomly, but my parents got divorced when I was really little. And so I feel like trust even has always been something that has kind of been hard. Like, just trusting that someone is true to their word. And I was able to really communicate that of like, being true to your word is really important to me. And he's just such a man of his word. And I honor him about that to this day. Like, just love that when he says he's going to do something or says he's going to show up, or he does. And that brings so much like comfort and security. He's not perfect, and but I think that's so admirable, and it makes you feel so safe.
Yes. Yes. And beautiful that like God would redeem that in your life.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Really encouraging. What words of encouragement would you give to someone who's listening, who's single or dating, or like wants a story like this, but is like, oh my gosh, what do I even do with myself?
Yeah. I think I would encourage, first, really, when we focus on our own growth and really thinking about, when it comes to dating and marriage, if you want to get married, asking yourself the questions of like, who is the person that I would want to marry, and who do I personally want to be in marriage, and then start growing personally, and like for me as a person of faith, like just being able to pursue God wholeheartedly and focus on that, and rather than spending all this like time and energy and stress, I don't know, trying to like chase, I guess, what you want, because ultimately like God is going to align your path with the right person at the right time. Like, I truly believe that. And if we stay close to him, like he'll lead us to where we're supposed to go. So it's like, how do you grow into just the person that you want to be in your 20s? They're going to keep growing your whole life, of course, but just like using that time well. And I think learning to wait well. I mean, that kind of goes hand in hand with that.
Yeah.
But I just think waiting is so hard. Like, if you think of anything that really strips things of you the most, it's like when you desire something and you're having to wait. And I think that was hardest for me when I felt the desire and even the affirmation of, this doesn't feel like a wrong thing. It feels like right, but it's just not the wrong time. Yeah. And so how do you really submit and surrender to God in the season that he has you in, because you want to be wholeheartedly in what he has you in, so that you can be prepared for what it's like, because God really, and I had that time in my like season leading up to Matt and I dating, I feel like I was the person I needed to be. Like, he prepared my heart and my mind for that relationship. So whatever it is in our life, I think that if we can learn to really wait well, it's like if you're in a job that you don't love, but you're like, it doesn't feel like the time yet to move to a new job. Like, I see this all the time in girls that I get to walk alongside who they're just like, this doesn't feel like what I want to do long term. I mean, I think a lot of us feel this with work. And then, but you're like, this is where God has me. How do I be like all here?
Yeah, being really present.
And just waiting well. And I think God really honors faithfulness in stewarding. Like it says, to whom much is given,
much is expected.
Yeah, much is expected. Or just like if we honor with a little.
Yeah, faithful in the little.
Faithful in the little. Like,
much. Yeah.
We can be faithful with much. And I just think that, you see stories throughout scripture like Joseph or Daniel or David, or they were in obscurity and had promises of God, visions from God about where they were going, and they were just faithfully doing what God had told them to do, and God had good plans for their life. And Daniel's not stuck in the lion's den. Joseph was not stuck in prison. Like, God was taking them places.
Yeah.
They weren't going to stay. The Israelites weren't going to stay in the wilderness. They were like going somewhere. And I think we can just get so stuck in where we're at and feel like hopeless, honestly. And forget that like these promises are true, that God has good for us. And he loves us. And if we could just believe that he sees time so much differently than us, but days can just feel so long when you're waiting, no matter what it is, It's
so true. And I met with one of my friends' mom that I babysit for, and she was sharing with me, Julia, you might be in a season where, you don't know when you're going to get married or if, or, what that timeline could look like. Could be in 2 years, could be in 10 years. You don't know, or never. But once you do get married, then your friends start having babies, or once your friends have babies, it's an apartment, it's a city to move to. There's always something you're waiting for, and that was really helpful to me. So anyone listening, if you're like waiting for a relationship, there's like waiting is the context of life. It's not just your 20s. It's not just when you're single. It's like always.
It does feel kind of deceptive though when you're in that one, because it feels like once that thing though, like I'll be there.
Absolutely.
It'll feel like free from this feeling of waiting. And you get there.
Yeah, what do you say? You're there. What do you think? Are you there?
Right,
or
like,
do you
there's
feel
more
like you're
things
still
I'm
waiting?
waiting on?
Yeah.
I
know.
For sure.
Yeah, I know. And I even think back to, it's cool, just our conversations remind me so much of the pandemic. And, obviously that's had an impact in all of our lives. But thinking about that season when everyone was waiting and we didn't know how long it would be. Yeah. And it felt like just hope deferred for really everyone. Most dreams really weren't happening. And to look at where we are now and the things that you're doing with Rise Collective and just the things that are happening, in people's lives and creative projects and just things in the world, it's like none of us could see any of that.
No.
There was a period in time when no one could see that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I feel like that's a word for anyone who's waiting. It's like, you literally can't see the future, but there is something, just like what you were saying.
There is.
Yeah. That's really good. Wow. Yeah. Waiting, man, it's hard, but waiting well.
Waiting well.
That'll get you. Have there been any other challenges aside from the ones you really already have shared that have felt significant in your 20s?
Definitely more challenges. I think since post-COVID, something that's felt challenging has been pursuing performing arts. And I think when you just like having that open door, and for those that are listening, if you share this experience of the performing arts industry, you know that it is so like open door, closed door.
Yeah.
One contract, next contract. So it's not like you don't sign yourself up for this and not know that that's what's going to be the reality of it. But I think just it feeling really hard to go from that opportunity being taken away and then, okay, let's like rebuild, and going into a season of just so much auditioning and getting to the end of a lot of like different auditions and callbacks and just not getting the job.
Yeah.
And I think that that challenge and just the tension that you feel when you're like, I'm showing up, I feel like I'm doing good work.
Yes.
Like I feel like I'm in obscurity. Like that's what it's felt like in this past season. And I think what it's led me to is awakened creativity and curiosity about my just individualism in artistry, and just starting to ask questions like outside of doing a good audition and Broadway, like what are the things that I love? Like I love jazz music.
Yeah.
How can I like take a step in starting to do more jazz music? So I started like folding laundry and singing jazz music on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I've started painting more in the past couple of years and like getting into more visual art, kind of baby step at a time. But just learning like, okay, I'm like artistic by nature, and that has always looked like funneled into this like goal. But I just think that God has like so many horizons for us when we allow just like space to be curious and be creative. So I think, I mean, a lot of people learn this in the performing arts, but I think that people just start kind of creating their own stuff because they're like, I'm not just going to wait around to be given permission to create. And so that's been like a challenge that has also led to just, I don't know, a beautiful season of starting to discover more about that and be confident in that. Because I think that, honestly, I think we can kind of hide behind like characters or I can at least, and be like,
or like someone picked me to do this job.
Yeah, and you're not the visionary when you're in a show. It's like they're telling you what to do. They're directing you. You are the character that they tell you to be. Like you're following a script. Like there's a lot of it that is very structured. And so being able to, it's a lot harder of a thing to like create your own thing. Yeah,
which you're doing with the ministry already.
Yes,
and your podcast, but
funneling that into like performing art.
Yeah,
you're like, oh, being me as an artist and like bringing my own like life experience into that, and I don't know, it's like a whole thing.
It's a whole thing, but it's exciting. Yeah.
But the tension of auditioning is hard, and I think that's another area that I've learned to wait.
Yeah. It is really hard.
Yeah.
Well, what gives you hope or kind of keeps you grounded? Or I guess what has given you hope in your 20s so far when things are uncertain, changing, especially in a field like performing arts or starting your own nonprofit?
I have a lot of hope in how God is moving on the earth right now. Just feels like God's like doing something right now that is just like really profound and beautiful. And it's like he's always moving, but I don't know. I feel really thankful to get to be a part of that here in New York City, in our church and in Rise Collective, and just through like a couple of ministries that I get to volunteer with, one being If Gathering, and they're doing this global prayer gathering next March, and just getting to pray and hear stories and testimonies of like how God is moving on the earth and like on other continents, and just huge moves of God, and it's bringing me like so much hope and perspective of like how God is moving on this whole earth, and that it's like it's bigger than just Manhattan or even the United States of America. Like it's really beautiful. So just there's like so much hope in Jesus, and I feel like that's giving me hope.
That's really good.
This
is kind of a similar question, but what are you looking forward to? Maybe with the things you're already doing, or something completely different just in the rest of your 20s in life? What are you looking forward to?
I always say this. I tell my husband Matt, but I say it to other people too. I'm like, I feel like your 40s are prime.
Right?
And I'm honestly actually looking forward to, I just think mentorship is so special, and I feel like I get to do some of that I feel like quite a bit of that in Rise Collective. And, you know, we've been doing this series on, we've been calling it Conversations with Spiritual Mothers, where we've been bringing older women in to just speak life into the next generation. And I'm just excited about continuing to get to like the cross-generational like partnership of like seeing the next generation just, you know, rise up into their like calling. And I just think that I was reading this Barna study recently on Gen Z, and they kind of taglined Gen Z as the open generation. And there were all these statistics about like the openness for faith in the next generation, and also for like the I think they talked about how we're like activists. And Gen Z really has this like participatory, active desire in them.
Wow.
And I think that's really exciting to think what new ministries, what new organizations and businesses, and just like how God is going to move through the next generation, and getting to I don't know, continue to get to the prime of the 40s and then the 50s and the 60s and just like walk out life and see like, I don't know, passing the torch from like one to another.
Yeah.
In a 20s podcast, I'm like talking about
can't wait to be 40.
Can't wait to be 40. But yeah, I just think that it's like a narrative I want to flip. That it's like me being revolting against culture, because culture is like, every 40-year-old, you need to look 21.
Right.
And I'm like,
you're like, I'm 27.
Let's like embrace age and realize that like wisdom comes with age. If
it does,
not always, but
pretty much, like generally
speaking, you learn things as you get older.
I know.
So
I know. I always say that. I feel like on the podcast, I'm like, I know we have limited wisdom because we're all in our 20s, but. Yeah.
Honestly, too, encouraging to the people listening in their 20s, find people that are mentors for you.
Yes.
And if you don't have someone who you really look up to, that you look at their life and you're like, that is a life that I would want to live. And I know you talked about on your personal podcast that you had like a couple families in Texas that you really loved and you admired how they lived, and you like soaked that up.
Yes.
And I think that is so admirable, and we can learn so much from just being around people who are a little bit older than us and just asking them questions and being curious. And that makes like both feel loved. You know, I mean, that makes like someone older feel loved too, to be like, I have something to offer, and like they want to learn from me. And I just think it's how we're made to function. So
yeah, I totally agree. Especially when
we scared to ask someone.
Right. Yes, because people actually want to, but you might think they're too busy or something. But they probably would love to. And when we move to cities that are away from our family, we're literally just around people our own age. So we really need that.
We do need that.
Yeah. Oh, this was such an encouraging conversation. Thank you for sharing your story. Thanks for being so real.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It was a joy.
Oh,
no tears were shed.
I know.
Just a joy.
Reflecting on the tears.
Basking
in the joy. Oh, well, you're a joy. Thanks, Laura Leigh.
You too. Thanks, Julia.
Guys, you can find Laura Leigh on Instagram. You can find Rise Collective on Instagram. I have all your links. I'll put them in the description.
Yeah. I'll say too, can I give a little pitch here? Yeah. If you are in your 20s and you are thinking about moving to New York City, and that's on the horizon for you, for Rise Collective, we are developing a discipleship program, and we're planning to launch it this September.
Oh my goodness.
So like applications for it and everything will go out this summer. Hopefully. That's our plan, at least right now. So if you have any interest in this discipleship program, it will be a 10-month experience where a small group of women live together and learn to follow Jesus in community with like weekly Bible study and a couple retreat experiences and workshops with different like Christian leaders and stuff. So if you're interested in this, I'll, I don't know, give you a link or give you my email or something. But yeah, reach out to me.
That's awesome. So, oh my gosh,
keep up with Rise Collective, and we're going to be sharing more about it. So
wait, that's so exciting. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Oh, yay. Okay. We'll see y'all next week.
See you next week.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening, friends. Be sure to subscribe to Tears and Joy in Your 20s wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media and send this episode to a friend. We'll see you back here next Thursday.